I can't lie, DG Nation. I'm telling you now, remember the name Kerim Alajbegović. I probably butchered his name, but he's an interesting prospect. He's been someone that's been linked with us since he was 16. He's 18 years of age. You would have seen his exploits at the World Cup for Bosnia. Obviously, Arsenal fans, we want the Bacolas, we want the Rodgers, we want ready-made players, quote unquote, ready to upgrade our starting 11 and upgrade the trajectory of this football club. But let's have it right, man. Every summer, Arsenal fans are sitting here crying about 70, 80, 100 million euros players. Every winger costs stupid money to the point where whether you rate Martinelli or you don't rate Martinelli, look at the fee that Anthony Gordon went to Barcelona. I cannot begrudge Mikel Arteta's Arsenal for saying we want a similar fee for Martinelli. Nor when you look at Bacola, Rodgers, this one, that one, any player who's a household name, there's a premium. In many ways, you could say it's a seller's market because if you've got one of these players, you can command the highest fee. You look at what Elliot Anderson's got. You could also add a caveat and say it's a buyer's market. We've got two choices. You either find these players before they end up where they end up and they do what they do and the price tag attached to it, or you say, do you know what? This is the going rate. In similar vein to Declan Rice, let's put the money down, people. You know, every winger costs stupid money. Every young talent is suddenly a generational prospect. Every club knows Arsenal and many a Premier League team has money, and everyone wants to tax us and apply a tax. So it puts you towards a simple question. Where are the smart moves? Where are the signings before everybody else wakes up? Where are the players Arsenal should be watching before the market goes mad? Not that it hasn't. And then when I look at Kerim, he's exactly the type of player Arsenal should be keeping a profile on. For me, if you got a game-changing left winger or an attacking addition in addition to this guy, I think he'll pay off his price tag and it will look like pennies on the dollar if I'm completely honest with you lot. He's the exact type of player we want. I'm not saying go and drop stupid money tomorrow. I'm not saying he walks straight into the Arsenal's first team, but age-wise, talent-wise, profile-wise, market-wise, it makes sense. And I do believe this is the sort of move where you either move early or 2 years later you're crying because somebody else wants to spend 70, 80, 100 odd million quid. Why are we even talking about him? First things first, what we don't need to do is pretend that every young player linked with Arsenal is automatically the next superstar. We've seen that movie before plenty of times over. But there are certain profiles that make you look at the way football is going and think, yeah, this makes sense. Cream is direct, he's brave, he's young, he's got that modern wide forward feel. The kind of player who doesn't just receive the ball and pass backwards. He wants to carry it, he wants to attack the space, he wants to provoke havoc, and he has the ability to do things off the cuff and have that X factor and ultimately make defenders uncomfortable. In today's market, in line with what Arsenal need, it makes ridiculous sense, and that's what matters. Arsenal don't need any more neat footballers. We've got neat footballers. We've got technical security. We've got players who can keep the ball. Sometimes, and I think everyone would agree, last season and the seasons before, you could even say the Champions League final, which I'm not suggesting this is the case with this individual. You know, there's been times where you think just a bit of a spark or a bit of individual brilliance, and quite simply, it would have made the world of a difference, people. How many times did we say, bro, can someone just beat their man? Can someone just create some chaos? Can someone just force the opposition fullback to actually defend and put him on skates? And that's why this individual, Kareem's profile, interests me. Not because he's the finished article. He's a long way away from that. But because Arsenal need to be alive to these players before the hype becomes too loud and the price tag attached becomes ridiculous. Now, this is where Arsenal have to be smart because we cannot keep living in a world where every solution costs 80 million. Scouts, do your job or put the money down. I want Morgan Rodgers, but you're looking at the price tags all the way from 85 to 100 million. Aston Villa are going to tax you. You want Bacola. PSG are not silly and they're not going to let him go cheap. You want Nico Williams, you know, wages, release clause, competition for his signature. Everything becomes complicated. We wanted Rice and Eze. That came with a Premier League tax. You want any half-decent winger, the market goes crazy. And at some point, Arsenal's scouting team, whether that would be the wider scouting team, Arteta and Berta or Mikel Arteta, whoever you want to mention, someone has to say, right, where is the next one? Not the obvious one everyone is fighting for, but the next one. And that's how top clubs, which we are, stay ahead. You got to remember, Real Madrid didn't wait until Vinicius was worth 150 million. Brighton don't wait until players become household names. Dortmund made a whole business model of making moves early. Arsenal have done it before as well. Martinelli, whatever you say, was signed for 6 odd million quid. It was before the current regime, but we saw Saliba be an emerging prospect. We moved early. He's the best centre-half in the world, arguably. Even Gabriel Magalhaes was you could say the same. Arsenal trusted the profiles. So when I'm talking about Kareem, I'm not suggesting he's our savior. This is me saying Arsenal need to be more of this kind of thinking, especially if we don't want to pay the price tag for these established stars. What I like about him beyond everything, the skills, the tenacity, the showmanship, all of that stuff, ultimately, it all finds me coming back to personality. It sounds simple, but trust me, it matters. Some young players look technically sweet, but they play safe and they're inconsistent and they look scared. Everything is one touch backwards, recycling possession. They lose the ball and they don't take risks where you need to take risks. Kareem looks like he wants to hurt teams. He wants to receive it in all sort of conditions. He wants it on the high half turn. He wants to drive. He wants to take responsibility. And for a young player, that positive arrogance, the good type, you could call it youthful naivety, in which I equate to Max Dowman. We need that. Arsenal need attackers who make defenders panic. Saka does it. That's why he gets doubled up against every week. Martinelli at his best does it when he's aggressive and running in behind. The Trossard obviously gives you a lot of quality, but he's not a touchline demon and he's getting on a bit. Jesus, obviously, he can do all of these things, but that was Jesus of a few years ago. And then the other players I haven't mentioned, you can catch my drift, people. You're looking at someone who can develop into that wide forward profile Arsenal fans are crying out from. Another thing, he's listed at about 1.86 meters. So he's not some sort of lightweight that's going to be bullied. And he's 18. So mentally, physically, technically, ability-wise, he's established himself, but he can go up several gears. And that matters. You need technique, but you also need physical tools. If you're going to survive in England, especially at Arsenal, where every away ground wants to kick lumps at you, you need power, balance, speed, and confidence. And he's got the real ingredients of that. I'm not going to overhype him, but I don't think we should sleep either. Now, let me once again be clear, because you know how football fans move. I'm not saying start him, sign him and start him at Anfield away. Relax, people, man. I'm not saying he comes in and necessarily benches Bukayo or whoever the other left winger would be. This ain't career mode. He's young. He'll make mistakes. He'll have games where he disappears. He'll need coaching. He'll need structure. He'll need development. But that's why you make this move early. You don't want to wait until a player's perfect because it has to be 100-odd million. That's when the player's price tag becomes ridiculous. And that's my whole point. Us Arsenal fans and football fans at this moment in time were sitting there and crying and saying the market's cooked, and rightly so. But part of beating the market is outsmarting the market. And part of that is identifying players and moving before everybody else starts, clocking what they're on. And this is a sort of player where you put him on that board. Not necessarily at the top of the board, but he should be at the board. And if he keeps developing, if he keeps producing moments, if he keeps showing personality, his price tag is only going to get bigger and bigger. And you then have to ask yourself, where does he fit? For me, it's not just left wing. It's wide forward depth. It's future proofing. It's succession planning. We need to think not just about this year, but 2 years ahead. Trossard's quality, he's not going to be here forever. Jesus needs to go. Martinelli's days could appear numbered. Madueke, we don't have consistency. Bukayo Saka, the quality's there, but you've seen the injuries, people. And then you've got the Wanyeris, the Dowmans of this world, people. And also, I know he's not a winger, but Miles Lewis-Skelly. And on top of Mascara and things like that. These are the players that can be groomed and grow, not just for this year, but years to kind of come, people. And then, obviously, simply put, we're looking at 50-plus games a season, so there's plenty of games for people to play. With Arteta, the question is always, can you learn the out-of-possession stuff? Can you press? Can you understand rotations? Can you be trusted tactically? And I guess that's the challenge, because your raw talent is going to get you this level of attention, but your level is going to require discipline if you want to make it at Arsenal. If Kareem has the mentality, if he wants to work, if he can take the coaching, then this is exactly the type of profile Arsenal want around, if I'm honest. And this is where I look at Berta and the scouting department, because it's easy to identify the obvious names. Anybody can say, sign Bacola, Rodgers, Nico Williams, etc., etc. That's not even necessarily scouting. That's watching football with Wi-Fi. The real work is, who is the player before the 80 million valuation? Who is that player before the Champions League breakout? Who is that talent before every Premier League club spends a check? All of these players had to start somewhere. Could we have got Doué when he was at Rennes? Could we have got Bacola when he was at Lyon? The Gundogan, the Kevin De Bruyne's, the Salahs, etc. before they've ended up where they've ended up. It might not be the sexy name that gasses up fans at the point of entry to this club, but in a year or years to come, you could say, well, you know what? That makes a lot of sense, people. I'm not even saying, Kareem is definitely the one, but he represents the type of one. Technical, brave, young, physically interesting, a high ceiling. We're a very good player at this moment in time with the potential to be great. Not yet at a stage where you need to remortgage the Emirates to buy him. And that is where Arsenal have to be more aggressive, because the transfer market is not waiting on us. Chelsea will keep stockpiling. City will keep moving and doing what they're doing. The Brightons, the Brentfords, the Bournemouths, the Dortmunds, they all keep buying these kind of players and flipping them at a profit. Leipzig, Salzburg, and Leverkusen, these clubs live in that space in which, ironically, he's rubbed shoulders with 2 of the 3. So Arsenal cannot just sit there waiting until the whole world agrees a player is good. By then, you're too late. So for me, The verdict is simple. I'd bring him in if the price tag makes sense. You know, him or Antonio Nusa, away from the obvious names. He's definitely one to watch. Not one to overhype, not one to crown, but one Arsenal should absolutely have on their scouting list, and which we actually do, because Arsenal are serious about building a squad that can compete for years. You need two types of signings. We need ready-made killers and we need smart future bets. You need the 60 million pound player sometimes, but you also need the player who becomes a 60 million player after you sign him. That's the difference between chasing the market and beating the market. Arsenal need to start beating the market again. So that leads me to a simple question. DG Nation, that leads me to a simple question. DG Nation, let me know in the comments. Would you take Kerim as a future Arsenal project, or do you think Arsenal need ready-made attackers only? Like the video, subscribe if you're new. I know, as always, people, scouts, do your job, because we're tired of hearing every player is overpriced after the whole world already knows they're good.